throw this shit up on Twitter and stuff too. That way people can see my tweets.
All right, Mark, we're live.
And we are live. We're here.
Do you ever mess with Periscope?
I've used Periscope before. Kind of a long time ago though.
Yeah, I think it's still around. We could easily go live on there as well.
Oh my God.
Go live all over the place.
Yeah, I think like the more spots, why not? Like what? I don't know if it hurts anything.
No, let's
Just be fucking living all over the place.
Yeah.
Living La Vida Loca. Right?
Is it racist that you're looking at me asking that?
I think so.
All right, just making sure.
Live on YouTube. And, sorry, I'm writing this as we speak. This may not be the best air piece you've ever seen in your life. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Bam.
Well, bam.
Done deal. We're going to talk today about nutrition. And I know we talk a lot about it, but we're going to talk about some backwards thinking that has been thrown around. Some things that have come to my attention from just some recent research. That long ass trip to England and France. I was listening to some podcasts that Joe Rogan had, and he had guys like Gary Taubes on there. I was also listening to more recently a bunch of different stuff about fasting, and on top of all that, we got Lane Norton here on Friday. Tomorrow we got Josh Bryant, and we also have Jake Cutler, Phil Heath coming up, as well as Steph Cohen, Hayden Bowe. I mean, shit's just jam packed over here. We're just getting down. Matt Brown. Almost forgot about Matt Brown. Fucking badass UFC fighter. He's going to be freaking fantastic. And that's what we have going on. So I wanted to hop on here, and we were... sometimes what happens here at Super Training is we're just kind of shooting the shit, and I'm like, let's podcast. And Andrew's like, fuck yeah. And so here we are.
I ain't scared.
That's what happens. How do I look at the questions? Can I go onto my own Facebook and watch myself live?
I think so. I might have to restart the Facebook Live, but the YouTube is still going.
I see there's 37 people on there now. And they're like watching me, but it's like not in that time. How do I find the comments? Let's see if I click on the video. Oh, there's the comments. All right, I'm good. I just wanted to be able to see some of this just in case, I can start answering some questions. But right off the bat, we're not going to mess with questions for a minute. So I may check in with you guys in a minute. But here we go. Let's see.
Well, for starters, did you eat anything weird while you were overseas? Because I know, at least in the movies, they show, other countries serve weird foods and whatnot.
Yeah, I didn't really eat anything too weird. When I ate in the Eiffel Tower when I was in France with Fam, we sat down for lunch at 12 and got out of there at about 4:30. So that's a traditional French cuisine is served that way. They take their time. Mm-hmm. It's like a big event. They serve you drinks and serve you food, and they take their time with it. And you get many, many courses of food. And during that, I mean, there were some things that were a little different, but the main thing that I ended up, my main course for that meal was veal, which I've had before, but it was really, really good. The desserts were really good. Everything was really good. But I just think, in terms of being fat, no one does it better. Mm-hmm. No one does it better than Middle America. No one does it better than the US of A. And other countries are getting fat, though, Mm-hmm. Mexico as well. And then other countries are just getting more and more kind of first world problems where they're getting excess of chips and snacks and cookies and everything else.
Because it's easier to get it to other places, right?
Yeah. Yeah, people are just... Right. So as I was listening to Gary Taubes through many different. I would listen to him on YouTube. I listened to him do a presentation to CrossFitters. And if you haven't checked out anything from Gary Taubes, you should listen to him. And if you're somebody, if you're going to listen to any of these people, if you're going to listen to Mike Walker talk about sleep, or you're going to listen to Gary Taubes, or you're going to listen to Tim Ferriss, or you're going to watch, Joe Rogan podcast or this podcast, always try to go into it with an open mind.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do is to think, oh man, I'm not going to listen to this guy because he's vegan. Or I'm not going to listen to this guy because he does keto. I'm not going to listen to this guy because he's talking about eating carbs. Would it be possible that Phil Heath would be loaded with some great information, even though obviously Phil Heath is going to be somebody that utilizes a lot of carbs? So it would be completely asinine of me to not listen to him. It would also be asinine of anybody to listen to somebody like Phil Heath and think that what he's talking about only applies to bodybuilding, and that it can't apply to sports nutrition, that it would never apply to basketball or football or baseball or running 10 miles, right? So there are some mistakes that people are making, though, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that I'm seeing is one of the biggest outlier diets in the history of this planet is the Atkins diet. Years ago, Dr. Atkins came up with a ketogenic style diet. There were some talks previously before that about lower carbohydrate diets. He's not the guy that invented it or anything. He didn't invent ketones. But he's the one that really did bring it to the forefront, and he actually ended up dying. And when he died, we talked about this when my brother and I were on Joe Rogan's podcast. When he paid, but I'm thinking to myself, well, what are you going to die from?
Mm-hmm.
If your brain shuts down, I don't even know. If you die, I think you die only when your heart stops, pretty much, right?
Mm.
And I could be a fucking idiot. I could not even know that information, but you get my point. Is we have to die from something, and just because you're trying to have a healthier lifestyle doesn't mean that you're immortal. Doesn't mean that you're going to live to 140. And we had Kyle Kingsbury on just the other day, and he talked about that, and he talked about how you can have shock proteins, and there's different things you can do going into an infrared sauna. You can have better longevity, perhaps. Some of the research is showing that, leaning towards that. And there's definitely a lot of other things you can do. There's something called autophagy, which happens when you fast. It's the killing of old cells. And, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I don't really know the science behind it, but it sounds promising. Sounds like there's a lot of good information there. And we can talk to Dr. Lane Norton when he's on the podcast. He'll be able to help us a lot more with that. But when Dr. Atkins came out with his research, came out with his information, other people in the community were like, there's no way that this works. And they ran quite a bit of studies on it, and they found that they were wrong. They found that not only did it work in terms of weight loss, but it also worked for health management as well. It worked with all-cause mortality. It helped with heart disease. It helped with type 2 diabetes. It helped with a bunch of other things. Now, here's where I think we're losing. We're losing in a lot of areas, but the number one area where we're losing is when people get on a soapbox about a particular diet. Now, I know I've been promoting the war on carbs, but I also make my story very clear on why I promote it, on why I promote low carb lifestyle. I do not believe a low carb lifestyle is for everyone. I think if you're playing football, if you're an MMA fighter, I don't think that you need this low carb lifestyle. Now, maybe you utilize it sometimes, but for maximum sports performance in most sports that aren't just flat out endurance sports, I don't think a ketogenic diet, I don't think it's a good idea. And not only that, I just don't think it even makes any sense. I think that we need carbohydrates. Stan Efferding had the quote of, I can use the stairs to get to the top of the Empire State Building, but I'd rather use the elevator, right?
Yeah.
And, his point is carbohydrates are a great weapon, and they can help us get to where we want to get to faster if we utilize them. Now, the problem is that we abuse them, and we end up with something called insulin resistance, which I'll dive into in a second. But I think that And I don't know what Dr. Atkins' original mission was. I'd have to go back and kind of look it up and see what he was trying to do. But in people's efforts to fight type 2 diabetes, they stumbled upon some of these things for low carbohydrate style diets. And a low carb diet to fight disease, to fight diabetes, and to fight perhaps heart disease, and to fight some other things off. That proves that. I mean, that seems to be working well in fighting disease and the elimination of carbohydrates. We have the carnivore diet. We got many different versions of monitoring your carbohydrates, monitoring the amount of sugar that you take in, and we have people getting healthier. Now, where we screwed up was we thought that we would take that same diet and we thought that we would apply that to you having maximal output in sports performance. And that's where I think the biggest mistake is. How could you be on any diet that's restricting you of too many things? I mean, the only thing your diet should restrict you of is junk. And if you're talking about maximal sports performance, because those things are going to take up space in your stomach. You don't have enough real estate in your stomach to do anything else that's bad for you. You have, it's almost like being distracted by something that goes off your normal path of what it is that you want to accomplish. You don't have time to be fucking around over here if you want to be the next Steve Jobs. You don't have time for those other things. Your stomach doesn't have time for you to eat pizza if you want to be the greatest running back in the history of the NFL. You may not have time to do that unless you can genetically beat it, because sometimes that happens, right? Who knows? Maybe Emmitt Smith and maybe some of these guys, maybe they didn't have great nutrition. And that's just the way that their body works. Everybody's body is going to work a little differently sometimes. And some people have to worry about it more than others. Remember in school, you'd have the kid that sat next to you that was getting, straight A's all the time. And he was like, oh, I didn't even study. Right?
Yeah.
And you're like, how the fuck did that happen? I got a 30 out of 100.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when the Kings were like on top of the world, second.
Yeah.
Being on top of the world. You would hear stuff about like Chris Webber, like his pregame meal was like 2 20-piece chicken nugget meals. That's what he ate right before a game.
Right.
Dude, that's not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair. And, I think what most people would say, what most coaches would say, strength coaches, people that are big into nutrition, most people would say he could have probably done better.
Yeah.
That's what most people would probably say. And you think about Chris Webber's career, he fell short a lot of times, right? Unfortunately, he was.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't ensure anything. Just because LeBron James has done a ketogenic diet in the offseason doesn't mean that everybody needs to do one, right? But LeBron James chose to do that because he wanted to lose some weight. He lost like 20 pounds. I think in his case, he even admitted, like, I lost too much weight. Mm-hmm. But that's what a ketogenic diet can do. It can be used specifically for something. A diet that's richer in carbohydrates, maybe like a traditional bodybuilding style diet where all 6 meals you're eating carbs, fat, and protein. And the primary thing that you're eating the most of is normally protein, and the carbohydrates are pretty high and the fat is pretty low. In my opinion, there's really only 2 styles of diets that you can do. You can either do one that's like and I hate even using the word keto, because as I've explained on the show before, it's not really keto unless you're like producing ketones, unless you're in like a ketogenic state. And not everybody's going to be there all the time when they eat low carb. There's many factors for that. Some people will have, they'll eat a surplus of protein, which might not allow them to produce ketones. Anyway, my point is that you have one of 2 choices: a low carb lifestyle where you're trying to utilize fat as your main fuel source, a low carb style diet where you're trying to use your fat as your main fuel source, and the other style of diet is a bodybuilding style diet where you have carbs, fat, and protein in the mix. Now, somebody would say, what about flexible dieting? What about if it fits your macros? Those things are all extended versions of a bodybuilding style diet. Those things are, in my opinion, and if it fits your macros and some of these other things that have come about where people are tracking their food, is also, to me, a lot like Weight Watchers. And that's not a negative knock on anything by any means, because Weight Watchers actually just did a great job. Weight Watchers knows that from the time we're little kids that we understand one thing very easily, is that we understand games and we understand points, right? And so Weight Watchers utilizes points. If you're to eat a McDonald's Big Mac, that's going to be X amount of points, and you can only afford so many points in a given day, right? And that's the way they have you track it. It's a way of taking, it's a way of taking these larger numbers, 2,000 calories and 20 grams of fat, and all this headache of all these macronutrients that we're taking in. We got carbs, fat, protein, and total calories to keep track of every meal. Well, if I just looked at a cheeseburger and said that's a 10, and a piece of steak, that's a 5, a chicken breast, that's a 5, right? Like if you can just, that's what happens when you're on a Weight Watchers diet, because you can start to associate it with points. So they actually did a pretty good job. Especially more modern times, they changed some of their thinking. They switched some of the things to be a little bit more positive towards protein, and there's various reasons for that. But the main reason why I wanted to talk about this today is that there just seems to be a lot of confusion. People are just getting fatter all the time. Lane Norton actually made a post kind of recently where he showed that people have gotten the message in America. People understand. They know that sugar is a problem. I think also that people know that they need to exercise. I think more and more people know that they need to exercise. I'd say anyone who's the age of 45 down, all that generation, from my age group and slightly higher to your age group, which is 32? 33, and even beneath that a little bit, right around, well, I'd say everybody beneath that definitely knows. But in most of the people that are going to face any sort of health issues within the next decade, which that's going to happen probably like within the next decade, maybe next decade or two, depending, right? When you're in your 50s, when I'm in my 50s, when I'm in my 60s, when you're in your 45, that's when you start to have problems. That's when you start to run into things. My dad was probably about 40. I think my dad was right around 40. He started running into some problems here and there. Anyway, as we start to head towards some of those things, we're going to have to be conscious that we're exercising. We're going to have to be conscious that we're doing all these things. But a lot of times it doesn't even help. I think, as crazy as it sounds, Donald Trump made the statement that he only thinks that we have so much energy in a given day, and so he doesn't exercise, right?
Yeah.
And everybody laughs, and everyone just now, what I would say is, like, I've heard of crazier things before. I've heard of all kinds of weird, different things working, and if what Kyle Kingsbury said, and what some other people we've had on this podcast have said, that stress is stress, maybe he's like slightly got a point. Like maybe your body doesn't know that there's these different types of stress that can really affect us. But maybe lifting weights and maybe being so hung up about having a set of abs and being so hung up about what you eat on a daily basis, is it possible that that's overstressing some of us? And maybe we're holding on to our body fat, because as I'll get into in a minute, being fat and being overweight is not 100% related to just what you eat, although what you eat kind of gets you in that position, but it's the hormones in your body not heading in the right direction towards you being healthier, towards you being leaner.
Yeah. Did you ever mess with like carb cycling, or because I know you do intermittent fasting every once in a while, but how about something like carb cycling?
Yeah, so like when I first started doing a ketogenic diet, I did a diet called one of the first low carb diets I did was from a friend of mine named Ron Fedko, who used to coach me and my brother in powerlifting, and he would say, about every 8 days or so, have a cheat day. And when we had our cheat day, we would just like get after it.
Yeah.
Like me and my brother would just like set up shop and, go get peanut butter cups and do all kinds of stuff. And we didn't really know, we're like, okay, well, we're good for these 6 days. And so on the on that seventh day rather, we'd have ice cream and pizza and this and that, because he kind of told us we could eat whatever we want.
What kind of pizza?
Well, we lived in New York, so it was, some of the best pizza in the world. But I kind of like cheese pizza quite a bit because I think that the more shit that you put on there, you start to ruin some of the flavor of actual pizza.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I like other stuff on there too. I don't mind it. But anyway, that's kind of how I started. And then as the years progressed, I got into some different diets. But there was almost always a cycle out of it. There's almost always carbohydrates that cycled you out of a keto diet.
Mm-hmm.
And there's numerous reasons for it. Again, going back to taking a medical diet that can help reverse type 2 diabetes. And people took that diet and they're like, oh, this is great for sports. And it's not great for sports. It's not. It might be good for some sports, but it's not great for most sports. There's a lot of things that are going to require carbohydrates. Even Dr. Baker, who's breaking world records in rowing, and he's in his 50s,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to deadlift over 700 pounds, I would still say he still would be better off with at least some carbohydrates. Now, what most of these diets never really took into account, though, is that what do you do if you've already been fat? What do you do if you already accumulated a lot of body weight? Because the real story is you have to figure out a way to get people to eat less food, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a calories in, calories out person, but calories do matter to a certain extent. And if you took some portion sizes, you reduced some portion sizes from most people and had them walk, they'd probably lose some weight. The thing is if we went in and put them, we put them on lockdown and made them do it,
Mm-hmm.
most of them would probably be successful. But most people don't have the willpower to do that. And the reason for that is a 300-pound person is going to eat more than a 200-pound person. The hunger and the cravings came first with everybody. The hunger and the cravings came first. You didn't start out weighing 300 pounds. You built up to being 300 pounds because you had a hormonal imbalance in your body that was created by yourself. So some of it's your fault. It's created by yourself. But some of it, you might even be able to date it back to what mom ate
Mm-hmm.
when you were a baby. There's a lot of factors in there, where your ancestors came from, right? There's a shit ton of things that we don't have any control over.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have control over. We have control over figuring out what is this problem and how do we attack it.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why a low carb style diet works is because it attacks the two things that are the main culprits of you being fucking fat in the first place, which is not you being lazy. The main two things that are responsible are the fact that you have food cravings that you no longer have control over, and you have too much hunger and too hungry. You're hungry because you're bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that a lot of times people will just be like, man, I just like, why can't that person just eat less? Well, you try being 300 pounds and see how little you want to eat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. You have more capacity.
You have more capacity. In the same way, it sounds insane to compare it, but the same way that a child grows, from if you weighed somebody at 8 years old versus weighing them at 12, they're going to weigh a lot more. And what are the parents going to say? Parents going to say, man, he's eating like a goddamn machine.
Mm-hmm.
He's eating everything in sight. Well, he's eating because he's growing. He went from being 80 pounds to 120 pounds. He's eating because he's growing. He's not growing because he's eating.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can make an argument that maybe he'll grow more efficiently if he has the correct vitamins and minerals and nutrients. But a lot of times those things happen even earlier in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that that's, something that Gary Taubes did a really good job of pointing out. And that's just a thing that I think that if we can have better perspective into why people are getting heavy, then maybe we can have a better conversation with them about how they should go about attacking it,
Mm-hmm.
rather than saying, hey man, like you got to work out 3 times a day. You got to walk 3 times a day. You got to lift weights 3 times a week. You need to do, intermittent fasting and sprint work, and just, it's like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're saying, so like a kid going from 80 to 120, it's because his body's growing, so he has more capacity. And you're saying somebody who's 300 is going to eat more than somebody who's 200 pounds because they have more capacity. But like we were discussing, like off air, what comes first? You know, is it the chicken or the egg? Are they eating more because they grew, or did they grow because they're eating more?
What came first was cravings and hunger.
Yeah.
Those are the things that came first because they abused carbohydrates and because they abused the way that the system works. People, like 100 years ago, you may have had access to sugar a few times a week, maybe even like once or twice a week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, now people in the United States don't go 3 hours without a dose of sugar. And I'm not talking about like just people eating ice cream.
Right.
Keep in mind that everything that you ingest turns into sugar in your body.
Mm-hmm.
It's called glucose, and that's what happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that all of it's bad. It doesn't mean all of it's good. It just means what it means. It means that it's a carbohydrate, and whenever you take in a carbohydrate, it's going to cause your insulin to increase,
Mm-hmm.
and you end up with something called insulin resistance. When you have insulin resistance, you're basically pre-diabetic, and it's something in the neighborhood of 200 million people in the United States suffer from this, and that's just the people that are diagnosed. How many people are in their 20s and 30s and stuff that have never even been to the doctor to even
Right.
see where any of that? How many people have? How much of a pain in the ass? Did you get your blood work done yet?
No, I haven't, because
It's a fucking pain in the balls.
pain in the ass.
It's a pain in the balls. It's not like you can go to Walmart and just get your finger pricked and they, a week later they send you the results or whatever. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get it set up.
Yeah. Can you describe insulin resistance?
Like
exactly what that means?
I ain't no doctor, so
what?
I'll just
hold on.
Yep. I might be a gynecologist though. I have a lot of experience down in that neighborhood.
I believe it's gynechiatrist.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Can I get a hey now? Jessica Smith shaking her head.
Denied.
I might be kicked out off the team. Insulin resistance is basically your body's not doing a good job of handling the influx of insulin. Insulin is supposed to take your carbohydrates and carry them into the muscle cells and be like, hey, here we go. We're going to make this guy more jacked.
Mm-hmm.
But because you've had how many bowls of cereal as a kid, and how many bowls of ice cream, and you just abuse the fuck out of carbohydrates and sugar over a long period of time, you're now resistant to that insulin that's being produced by your pancreas, and your body is taking the carbohydrates and it's putting it in the wrong spot. It's putting it it's putting it in the fat cells. When you're insulin sensitive, which most younger kids are insulin sensitive, they can handle those carbohydrates. And that's why we have such a diverse population of people who are waving their fists saying, you're a fucking idiot talking about keto. And you got other people waving their fists saying, you're an idiot for not talking about keto, right? And so a lot of it has to do with how people react to the carbohydrates that they're taking in. Some people are insulin resistant, and some people could really use the help of a low-carb lifestyle, and some people don't probably necessarily need it.
Yeah.
If you look at our boy Smokey, Smokey is probably fairly insulin resistant. He's probably fairly sensitive to influxes of carbohydrates. He probably just wants to hang around his waistline for whatever reason.
He eats a lot of ice cream.
And yeah, he's fat as fuck, right? I was trying to be nice by saying he's insulin resistant. No, when it comes to somebody like him versus his brother, his brother kind of eats whatever he wants. I mean, if you really dive into their lifestyle, I mean, I'm sure we would find some bowls of ice cream under Smokey's bed, right? That were already eaten, right? That are completely gone. Find some Snickers wrappers in his car and stuff like that. But still, his brother probably just simply handles carbohydrates easier. And you look at somebody like Nsima, I know he's always been active, and being active can help you with your how sensitive you are to insulin, and can help fight against insulin resistance. Oh, there's Smokey. Can't talk about him anymore now that he's here. Smokey, can you get me some more water? So that way I can talk about you more.
There you go.
But I mean, that is a huge difference between people is whether they're insulin resistant or not, and also there's different body types. Something that was pointed out by the guy that came up with mesomorph. Smokey's calling me apparently. It's weird.
That is weird.
He must have hit a weird button while he came in here. The guy that came up with the concept of mesomorph, ectomorph, and endomorph being the chubbiest, ectomorph being the skinnier, he referenced the fact that you can't turn an endomorph into an ectomorph. You can't become something that you're not. If you're a chub, you're always a chub. There's nothing you can't completely fight against it. There might be some people that might be able to argue that you can, but I don't believe that you really can. I am going to continue to lose weight. I'm working on like running and all these things, right? But I wouldn't have to work on a lot of these things if I was just naturally a skinnier person, right? Like as I stopped my powerlifting career and wanted to move on to something else, if I was a thin person, like Stan Efferding is actually a very thin person, I would be able to weigh 175, right? Or 185, but that ain't ever going to happen because that's not who I am. To take that a step further, your cells and everything that you have in your body remembers everything. Your body's like a giant fucking computer, and everything that's ever been said about you, everything that you ever thought about yourself, a lot of that plays into it as well as your genetics, where you came from, where mom and dad are from, what your mother ate, like all these things, they start to really factor in there. And the other thing this guy mentioned too, the guy that came up with the concept in like the 1940s of endomorphs and ectomorphs, he said, you know, you can take a basset hound and put it on a diet, but it's not going to turn into a greyhound. It's just going to be an emaciated, right? So it's going to be an emaciated, chubby dog. It might lose weight and it might get smaller, and people can make changes and they can look different. But look at Tyler Cartwright. You know, when he was on the show, like that guy lost almost 300 pounds. And does he look great compared to the way he used to? Fuck yeah, he looks awesome. He did a great job. And there's other people that have lost 100 pounds, 200 pounds, and so on. I lost 100 pounds, but I'm not going to blow away in the wind either, right?
I hope not.
I mean, my farts might blow away in the wind, or at least I hope they do. And he was a big boy. If you're not following him, by the way, he's got a lot of great information. Keto Gains.
Yeah, that's his before and after.
Keto Gains on Instagram.
So then how quick does your, you're saying your body doesn't forget stuff. So what if you're doing pretty good on a diet, say a vertical diet, and then you go camping and you eat a shit ton of s'mores and cookies and whatnot.
Asking for a friend.
Yeah,
you know, the unfortunate news about that is some people will say, well, you're not going to get fat in one weekend.
Yeah.
And that's actually untrue.
Yeah.
It's actually untrue. You can get fat from one meal.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that we have some weapons at our disposal when we know about nutrition and we know about exercise. So, what's a weapon that we can use? You know, you don't want to be a fucking freak, right? But at the same time, if you're on a camping trip and you're like, you know what? First thing in the morning, I'm going to go on a hike, and then when I come back, I'm going to eat the fuck out of just like whatever's here.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like a giant bear and attack the campsite, right?
Power bear.
Yeah, power bear.
Yeah. So then, because people...
But you can just exercise beforehand, you know, or afterwards, or you can make a decision, you know what, I'm going to eat those pancakes in the morning with as much syrup and as much butter as I want, but, later on, I'm going to clean shit up, or I just won't eat.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm just not going to eat for dinner, and because you splurged in the morning. Like,
right.
You can make these decisions and you can decide. But the hard part is you need to make the decision at every single turn all the time. And that's where it gets to be hard, because you have friends that are like, oh, let's get pizza. Oh, let's get In-N-Out. Let's go drink. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And next thing you know, and drinking doesn't play into any of this at all, unfortunately. You can drink and you can lose weight, but in general, when you drink, you're going to make poor choices, just life choices and otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So how enticing is a double-double going to be, when you had a few drinks or even if you're high, right? Like any of these things, they may not factor in there that well. So, we had my girl Rosemary has I think just since I was gone. Since I was gone in the UK, she's lost like 10 pounds.
Mhm.
And she was working out this morning, and I was like, fuck, doing great. Like, shit, what, you know? I was like, what'd you lose, 10 pounds? Our boy Charlie Zamora, he just lost about 10 pounds.
Yeah.
And it's not just going on a diet. It's not just picking and choosing, all right, I'm doing flexible dieting, and I'm going to, adhere to these calories. It doesn't work it's not that simple. You have to get used to the foods that you're eating. You have to get used to, Rosemary pointed out a bunch of mistakes that she was making. She's like, I wasn't really on the diet. She's like, I would go out and drink, and I would do this, and this. And I said, well, do you still drink? And she's like, yeah, I still have some. And she said, instead of drinking, 5, 6, however many beers it takes you to get to the point that you want to get to, she'd have hard alcohol. And it sounds like, you're trading one thing for another, but that is a good option. Having vodka doesn't have carbohydrates in it. It's in some sort of weird, we can talk to Lane Norton when he's here about that more. But it's some sort of weird thing where it's not going to spike your insulin levels as bad. Now, the problem is you're going to get drunk or tipsy or whatever you want to call it, right? And you're still going to make bad choices for food, and you're still going to order pizza or room service or whatever it might be, wherever you're at.
You'll end up at Taco Bell eventually. The Taco Bell.
I love Taco Bell.
It's pretty bad.
Taco Bell is something I have to talk myself out of almost daily because I drive past it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never in a million years stop at a Taco Bell, so I don't know why I have to talk myself out of it, but I see the commercials.
Have you ever had a Mountain Dew Baja Blast from Taco Bell?
Sounds pretty good, but
it's amazing. I haven't had it anywhere else except for at Taco Bell.
I have never had that, but I had a Captain Crunch milkshake from Carl's Jr. And if those guys bring that back, I'll be off my diet again. Holy fuck, was that thing amazing. That was so good.
That's dope.
I can't waste. I feel like it's too much of a waste of time to eat stuff like that. Like chips. I know you like French fries, so that's where you and I don't see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And we will fight over this one day.
Hopefully it's a long time away.
Chips, French fries, and any sort of drink that has like sugar in it. Other than if it's like a milkshake, then you kind of caught my attention. But drinking like a Sprite or something, I could give a fuck about that.
Yeah.
I'd rather spend my calories somewhere else. I'd rather have a pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are crunchy people, like they like crunchy snacks, and other people really like sweets a lot. But I think the sweet tooth thing, I think that normally happens with insulin resistance. I think that the two are kind of connected. I think that as however old you are when you start making poor choices, the information and data that's coming out more and more is showing that kids eat a lot worse than adults do now, which is like the adults are already eating fucking horrible. Yeah. But the adults are like, I don't want to be this fat anymore, so I'm going to, try to make better decisions. The kids don't even know what's happening to them.
Yeah. And
parents out there that are listening to this, you're abusing your kid if you're not paying attention to what they're eating. At least try to make some better choices for them. At least try to have some restriction for them. If your kid is 12 or 13 or 14, they're starting to make some of their own decisions, so it gets to be a little different. But when your kid is 5 and 6 years old and stuff like that, take the time, take the minute. I fucking hated cooking breakfast for everybody in the family every morning, but I did it because I thought it was important.
Yeah.
It sucked. I'm like, fuck, all I want to do is cook for myself and sit down and eat. Mm-hmm. But those are the things that are needed. Those are the things that need to be done. And I think parents will think, it's like this is a way to show love. Like my kid's sitting here eating an ice cream sandwich while they're on the iPad. It's like, no, you fucking idiot. That's the worst thing your kid can be doing.
Yeah.
Fucking have a better option. Have a better choice. Maybe if the kid really wants ice cream or froyo or whatever it is, say, hey, we can go get froyo. Let's go on a 20-minute walk. Let's go. We're going to park far away. We're going to walk for 20 minutes, and we're going to get some damn ice cream. We're going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just little things like that.
So what if someone's fallen off the wagon? They've had a cheat meal that's turned into a cheat month.
Oh, no.
Yeah. What's the next step they can take? Like, what's What's the best route that they should go follow now?
Again, it takes a long time to learn any sort of diet that you're going to try. So if you have tried a diet before, you need to kind of ask yourself, like, have I really actually tried it?
Yeah.
Have I stayed true to it? And has that diet, have I set myself up for success within that diet? Something like a vertical diet, to me, is playing around with things that are too enticing to overeat. This is for people that want to lose weight.
Yeah.
I can't stress that enough. This is not a performance-based information I'm giving, because, for the most part, the people that ask these questions are people that are just tired of being fat. So that's important to address, because a vertical diet is a fantastic diet if you want to be jacked and if you want to lift the most amount of weight possible. I think that there's control issues, though, with most people that are overweight, and I think that that's the main thing that's not addressed. And most people that give out diet information aren't fucking fat, or they never were fat, and so I don't think they have a good, strong place to speak from, because they don't know what it's like. They don't understand how enticing and how strong these food cravings can be. So I think that person that falls off the wagon, they have to realize that that's the number one thing that's holding them back, are those cravings. And then I think you have to get yourself in a situation where you have enough food prep and you have enough, you created an environment that's good enough to keep you strong. And you'll have to tell other people. You have to tell your significant other. You'll have to tell your friend, your mom, your dad, whoever it is. I say, hey, you know what? I really want to make some changes. I'm tired of being this way. I don't want to be this way anymore. And I could really use your help. So when you see me, saying I'm going to the store for ice cream, fucking take the keys away,
Yeah.
And there's things that you can do. You can kind of block yourself on stuff like that. When you're having those food cravings like that, you can, I always tell people, like, if you have a real bad food craving at night, what's always worked for me is to make like an omelet. I love bacon. I love sausage. I love cheese. I love eggs. I'll just make the omelet with my eyes, like I'll make it like as big and as fucking crazy as I want.
Yeah.
I'll throw avocados in there and make it all just insane, right? Like, it probably has some ridiculous amount of calories, but in my head, I'm just thinking, hey, this is a better option than me diving into a bowl of ice cream, because the bowl of ice cream is going to throw me off, and it's going to keep me off. You'll notice that when you go off your diet, that you end up having like a carb hangover the next day, and the only cure for it is more carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, man, I had so much momentum. Why did I do that? And then that whole next day, and sometimes even the day after that, it is a fucking battle, because those little motherfucking carb pulses are coming back in. They're hitting you hard. And they're, next thing you know, you're diving into more pizza or more ice cream or whatever it is. This shit ain't easy, And so anyone who's really having a hard time with some of those cravings and some of the hunger, you have to kind of pump the brakes. And I mentioned yesterday, I almost wonder, what if you were to take a survey, before you ate every meal? You said, is this helping? Like, number one question, is this helping you towards your meal, you fat fuck? That's the first question, right? And is it helping you towards your goal? I mean, honestly, is it helping you towards your goal for you to eat that pizza? Now, sometimes you can make an argument and say, you know what? Sometimes, because we got to live our lives, sometimes it's got to be okay. We have to have times where it's okay. But as we heard Kyle Kingsbury say, which I think is a really cool way to live your life, what if your worst meal, your worst day, your worst paycheck, your worst anything was still 10%, 20%, 30% better than the rest of the population? How good does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Right? Because you're trying to live to a higher standard. You're trying to push the envelope. You're trying to be better. And I think most of us that are coming to the gym often, most of us that are concerned about our diet and our nutrition, most of the people that are listening to this podcast, they want to make those changes. They want their worst day to be better than it was in the past, right?
Yeah.
And you want your best day to be better than that, right?
Yeah. I think if people do what you just said and rate their food, you know, like set
rape that food anally.
No, I just say rape.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I got excited.
Yeah, it's not food porn.
Sorry about that. That was a low point in the podcast. I don't know what happened. Smokey's in here.
You got excited?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like if you were to write down what your goal was, like to whether lose weight or gain weight, and then every time you sat down and you looked at your plate, scale of 1 to 10, and don't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
I think that'd be fucking huge.
Yeah, and maybe even at the end of the day, you got like some points, right? Like you either if you had 6 meals or however many meals, did you have 50 points, 60 points, or did you fall short somewhere? Did you kind of screw up? Did you? I do that. Like my diet is not. I would say that for the most part, every once in a while, I would say that I probably reach like an 8 or a 9, but it's never perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I have wine with my wife here and there, probably more than I should. Like I just, and things like protein bars and little things will sneak in there. And I have ways of justifying it just like anybody else. I'll be like, yeah, this is fine. There's certain things I try not to even purchase because I know that like I don't understand how to control that. And I'll also find weird shit. Like when you're hungry and when you're like a bear, like rating your, this is actually funny. And Andy Frisell is going to want to shoot me for this, but I'm going to go for it anyway. This guy is so fat. He's got such a fat guy mentality. I really, honestly, respect the hell out of the guy. He went from 350 pounds to 200 and I think he's about 250 now. So he's lost a lot of weight. He's done a great job. But in that process of losing weight, he's so addicted to food that his wife had to put a lock on their pantry.
Damn.
And I was like, that's fucking awesome. And not only that, but every once in a while he'll find where the key is and still break in there and still eat all the food. Yeah, there he is at 330 versus 277. He's a pretty open guy. He'd probably say it, but I never heard him talk about it on his podcast. his brother spilled the beans on that one. So
oh, no.
Yeah, that's how strong these cravings really are. Anyone that thinks it's not an addiction, I think is not paying attention. Their eyes open. They're not seeing what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Ohio, 1986. It's kind of hard to really answer his question, but it brings up something that I wanted to ask you about. But he's asking.
I'm not gay.
Oh, fuck.
What?
Again, what are we doing here then?
Mm-hmm.
He's asking for nutrition suggestions for somebody working the night shift. He works 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I don't really know what you would recommend for that, but when it comes to sleep, I know everyone's sleeping on sleep. You know what I mean? Like they don't take it as seriously as they need to. I don't know.
Yeah, your sleep has to factor in there somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to get your asses to sleep.
So when you were 330, what was your sleep like compared to what it's like right now?
I've talked about this before where, I really think that I just, there was a good period of time, there was a good period of time there where I really didn't sleep. Mm-hmm. And I've said before, it's probably like 3 or 4 years worth of not sleeping, which sounds insane, but I would sleep probably for the most part. I'd probably sleep for about 2 hours at a time. And maybe if I was lucky, I would get 4 hours total, because I would sleep for 2 hours and then wake up and sleep for another 2 hours. But, that whole story is a weird one because I was trying to gain weight for powerlifting, and I did, and I was big and strong and jacked. But then I went from that to just being fat at one point or several points even, because in my effort to be bigger, I was consuming a lot of food during the day, but I didn't really. It kind of snuck up on me that I ended up getting like addicted to food because then I would wake up in the middle of the night and like go kill like a bowl of cereal, shit like that. And so that took me a long time to even overcome that. I only kind of overcame that as of like a year ago.
Wow.
But I did that through, I replaced that with like a protein shake kind of before that time. Like I've done that for like the last 2 or 3 years, but that took a long time to break that habit. So for this guy with like the night shift thing, I mean, the unfortunate news is that your diet's the same. You know, your diet's the same. Girl, boy, whatever you are, old, young, and whether you're traveling to L.A. or you're traveling to New York or whatever, diet's the same. It doesn't change. And so the sleep is something that he'll have to try to manage. He'll have to try to figure out. But in terms of the food, it's going to be the same. Now, the easiest meal prep of all time is called intermittent fasting. And I know it's not easy to get in a habit of that, but if you can get yourself into a ketogenic state, your meal prep looks like this right here. Looks like absolutely nothing. You don't need anything. And that sounds like a kind of a crazy proposition, but there's people that you can listen to on YouTube. Dominic D'Agostino is somebody that you might want to listen to some of his stuff. He talks about fasting. Fasting can really help in a lot of ways. Now, if you think that's crazy and you don't want to fast, the other thing too, I think people forget about too, is they'll say, "Oh, I work nights," or "I work, this or that." How often do you work nights? Do you work every night? You work 7 days? Probably don't, right? So it's really sometimes 3, 4, maybe 5 times a week that you're doing that. And so you still at least have 2 weeks off or 2 days off to recover. Sometimes people, like if they're cops or if they're firemen, they're in this like rotation where they go like 4 days on, 2 days off, or however it works, right? And you might get some reprieve, you might get a little break from some of that. But in terms of like if you're trying a keto diet, you don't need, in my opinion, you don't need tons of meal prep either. You can there's a company called Epic. They make bison bars. They make bacon bars. They make, I had a Wagyu beef bar the other day. You can bring stuff with you like string cheese, or there's all different kinds of cheeses that come wrapped up, convenient to eat. Cured meats. You got like salami and pepperoni, and all those things start to become pretty easy options. You can hard boil some eggs. You can also stop at any Starbucks, and Starbucks always has their protein box, which has you just can't eat the little bread thing in there and the fruit if you're on a low carb diet, but it at least has the option of you get hard boiled eggs, you get some cheese. There's always options around. We talked on this podcast about the Flying Dutchman, the stuff that you can get from In-N-Out Burger. McDonald's, their burgers are supposedly fresh every day. I mean, who knows what the hell, who knows what's in some of these meats, but they're still a better option than what you were doing previously.
Yeah. When it comes to fasting, 'cause I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said whether it's consuming a drink or even a light amount of food or something, like if you stay under a certain amount of calories, you can still kind of stay in that fasting state. Is that accurate? Or
I just say like let's just leave fasting. Let's not try to redefine it. Like fasting is just not eating anything. There can be some different levels to it. Some people say don't even drink any coffee.
Yeah.
Just make your own rule. Make your own rule for it, and don't really sweat it too much. Like if you want to have coffee with some butter in it, like is it still better than what you were doing before? As long as it's better than what you were doing before. I've had many people in here utilize like a coffee fast, which I talk about in my book, and that worked really well to help with hunger, and it helped with weight loss. If you don't want the extra calories and you don't want to like that is officially breaking the fast though once you consume any calories, even if it's branched chain amino acids or anything, pre-workout drinks, all of it is a breaking of the fast. I know there's some people that say, oh, if it's 15 calories or 30 calories, and it's not, and so those are it's just bullshit. Like a fast is where you're not consuming anything, and the fastest way to truly fast is to fast without anything at all, without even drinking any water, and that's actually the best way to get the fastest results, but also the most dangerous because you're not drinking any water. But it's how autophagy happens a lot faster that way.
Yeah. Alex asks if you work out while fasted.
Yeah, I have before, but I think you just want to be reasonable. Like I've done a 48-hour fast before, and and lifted on that. But I know Ben Greenfield, Ron Penna, Mike O'Hearn. I know a lot of guys that are performing at a high level that use quite a bit of fasting. I think that you can use intermittent fasting pretty often. You can use it every day. Some people will fast 12 hours almost every single day, 12 to 16 hours every single day. I think that's kind of what Ron Penna does. But for me, I just pick and choose. I'm like, all right, I'll fast today. It depends. If you have a real goal and you're really trying to head towards something, then maybe you want to try it for a while. But I think the worst thing that anyone can do is to fuck up their diet today and then try to go super strict tomorrow, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And so even when you decide that you're going to have a meal that doesn't normally fit what you're trying to do and doesn't normally fit your goals, it doesn't mean you need to have 3 more of those before you go to bed. You're not running out of time. Hopefully you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll still be alive and you'll still have another day to fulfill, and hopefully that you'll live a couple extra days, right, where you're still going to have opportunities to eat pizza. You're still going to have opportunities to eat ice cream, and it doesn't have to all happen in one day. I think what happens is we go to like a baseball game or something, and we have a hot dog and a pretzel and a beer, and then we're like, okay, the whole day shot, fuck it, I'm just going to go nuts, right? And that's very common, but it actually makes sense because your taste buds they've been changed, right? It's almost like how great is a cup of orange juice in the morning? Fucking fantastic.
It's incredible. Yeah.
But brush your teeth beforehand and see how good it is, right? It's disgusting, right?
It does not taste good.
Now, some people utilize brushing their teeth as like as a sensation and as a rule to like, hey, this is the cutoff. And if you were to brush your teeth as soon as you finish dinner, maybe like little things like that, maybe they can help you, because you're like, I already brushed my teeth. I don't have to do it again. And I'm just going to fucking go to bed.
Yeah.
And I think people sometimes are just being unreasonable with what it is that they're trying to do. Always go back to the basics. If you're trying to utilize fasting and you're having coffee and you're having a little bit of heavy cream in there and stuff, I just don't think it matters that much. Unless you're trying to obtain something that's really hard to obtain. Like if you're trying to get to 5% body fat, well, then you're going to want to try to figure these things out a little bit better and dive deeper into them and listen to somebody who's a fasting expert.
Yeah. There's
books on it. There's all kinds of information on it.
Did you ever have to cut weight, like when you were powerlifting or competing, I mean?
Yeah.
Just because
I did it a bunch.
Jay Watkins was asking, he's 3 days out from a competition, and he wants to know, like, what's a good way to start cutting weight right now?
3 days out?
Yeah.
The story is long and complicated, but normally water manipulation is utilized where you'll usually drink more water, and then you'll restrict carbohydrates. And normally you just try to like pee it out, especially if it's like 5 pounds, depending on how much the person weighs. Yeah. The more that they weigh, the more that you can kind of swing with the body weight. It's hard to really just give out the advice just because it's too long-winded. But George Lockhart is somebody that's helped a lot of the people here at Super Training Gym with some of that info. And maybe if you hit up Filipino Thunder on Instagram, he might be willing to spill the beans to you a little bit, because he has a lot of great information. He's taken a lot of what George Lockhart has put together, and Jesse Burdick. Jesse Burdick's a guy that will program for you and help you out, and you can hit him up on Instagram too. He's just at Jesse Burdick. He knows a great deal about prepping for powerlifting meets as well as those weight cuts. But the main thing people usually do, a really common practice, is you're 3 days out from a competition. You're going to start to maybe drink 2 gallons of water. When you're 2 days out from the competition, maybe you cut back that water a tiny bit, and then the day before the weigh-in, maybe you have about 1 gallon of water. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to drink so much water, you're trying to water load that your body releases a hormone that makes you want to pee more. So you take the water that you are taking in. Let's just hypothetically say that you consumed, 5 pounds of water, right? the theory is that because you consumed 5 pounds of water and that's not normal, you released a hormone and now you're going to release 6 pounds of water. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's where some of that research and some of that information comes from. But you can also do like a sauna, you can do some of these things. But just always keep in mind that the more that you're going to try to weight cut, the more you're rolling the dice. And if you don't have somebody in your corner that really knows stuff about it, I would say have a cheeseburger and don't worry about it.
There you go. Yeah, George Lockhart talked about what you were just saying about water loading on our podcast. So you can definitely go check that out. It might be a little too late to do it 3 days out. But yeah, for anybody else, go check out that episode.
I see that there's a question about how often do I fast, and I'm just kind of, I'll just mix it up here and there. Although coming up, I think I'm going to start to utilize more fasting, but I'm also going to start doing. I'm also going to start taking the running a little bit more seriously too. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how all this pans out. But I'll let everybody know. I will. I'll shoot YouTube videos about it. I'll obviously be talking about it a lot here. I'll let people know as much as I can on Instagram because that's my passion. That's what I love to do. I love to share information.
Yeah. I know you don't partake. Neither do I. But have you seen any benefits to smoking weed after a workout, like from anybody that you've spoken to?
I have not heard much about like. I certainly haven't heard anything about any sort of science or research. That'd actually be a great question if you could write it down, keep it
that came
close to us, because that would be great to ask to Lane Norton.
Yeah, that came from Richard T on the YouTubes.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I when it comes to things like that, like if you take something and you feel better from it, then that's a decent gauge. But you also have to kind of think about what is that doing towards your goal? Like, is that helping you to relax and then you're falling asleep? I don't know. Maybe you can make some arguments that it's good, but listening to Michael Walker talk about sleep, he's kind of saying no. Like, there's not an excuse to be a pothead. There's not an excuse to be a drunk.
Yeah, he was saying that it actually makes you skip REM sleep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know. And, alcohol is weird because it's like a sedative and it kind of takes you down a little bit. And like if you just have like one beer or one glass of wine, you're just like, man, I just need a pillow somewhere and I'm good to go, right? And it helps. It kind of seems like it helps you get to sleep, but then from there, you don't get into the deep sleep that you need either. It's kind of a restless night, and most of us aren't really thinking about it that way. I think we're thinking that we're going to get some great benefit from it because it really does feel like it helps you relax. It does feel like it helps take you down. But yeah, that information from Michael Walker on just listen to Joe Rogan's podcast when he had him on there. It's like a 3-hour thing. I think it's really beneficial for everybody. Now, that's what that guy studies all the time.
Yeah. And
so, of course, he's going to be fucking militant and crazy about it, right? Who knows how the studies were conducted that he found out. But, I mean, they said that when you're training, when you get good sleep and you go back to the training that you did the previous day, you're 60%. This is what he said. He said you're 60% better than you were at the end of that last practice by getting a good night of sleep.
Yeah.
It's like, holy shit, man.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, the quote unquote gains that we get aren't always the most important thing. I think it's what we're missing out on is the most important thing. And I think if you're just missing out on good sleep, you're probably just missing out on some good hormone production. Whether you want to attach a percentage to that or not, I think that ends up being kind of a mistake because it's just so hard to really judge. But if I'm not producing the testosterone that I need, then I'm not going to wake up every morning with a boner. And then I'm not going to be late to work all the time because I'm with my wife, right?
Right.
And that's not good because then I'm going to be frustrated. And then you're going to have to give me a hand job in the bathroom. Then Jessica Smith's going to be like, why are you guys in the bathroom for so long all the time?
Be like, leave me alone. Greatest day of my life.
Yeah, and we're like, we're not gay, and she thinks we're gay, and then it turns into a whole thing, and then she starts judging us.
Ruin everything.
Yeah, she's just jelly. Stop being jelly, Jessica Smith.
Yeah. We've had a couple people say different things. Stan Efferding said he doesn't understand where people got the idea that we need to be drinking gallons of water a day or a gallon. George Lockhart kind of said the opposite was like, we need to be drinking more water.
Yeah.
What's your stance on how much water we should be drinking?
I think a lot of us have gotten the memo about water, and I think you see more and more people walking around with canteens and water bottles and Yetis and all these different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think people have been doing a better job of hydrating, and maybe Stan has a good point. Like maybe maybe we got that down pretty good. I think it is a good way to start your morning. Having Kyle on the podcast, he said, just every morning you wake up, you lost some water, in your sleep. For me, I'll lose 5 or 6 pounds every single night. Obviously, I'll regain it because it's just water, But and for other people who are smaller, they might be losing 2 or 3 pounds almost every single night. And so, yeah, you should try to. The easiest thing to do is wake up, have a glass of water, throw a little bit of salt in it.
Yeah.
If you hate the taste of salt, just salt your food at some other point in the day or whatever. But I think a gallon is probably like kind of excessive. However, if you're feeling tired in the middle of the day, if you're getting headaches and things like that, maybe you should look into that. But if you feel good, then march on, right?
Yeah. Aubrey Marcus, in his book I just started, he talks about 12 ounces with I think 3 grams of sea salt and some lemon. And
he's jacked. He's in good shape.
Yeah, so he's someone I'm gonna listen to. But so I'm
Dude, how do we get into that like club,
that tribe?
Yeah, so they have a tribe. It's like Aubrey Marcus, Kyle Kingsbury, and a couple other dudes, and they're all just like running around in Speedos.
Yeah, I was gonna say naked. Yeah,
like I just want to be involved. Like, how do I just? I mean, can you at least be there taking pictures or something?
That's usually my way in.
Can we get you in there?
I asked you one day, hey, can I take pictures? And oh, look at me now.
Yeah, it's like
so maybe if we go up to see Kyle while he's here in the Bay and be like, hey, we just want to go hang out. And the next thing you know, we're naked drinking ayahuasca.
Yeah. Can we all get high and like stretch each other out in Speedos and stuff or no?
I'm in. I'm down.
I don't know.
What is this? Yeah.
I think that's pretty much it, man. I think we nailed what we needed to nail. Diet-wise, I think I've answered enough questions from these assholes. Anything else?
We can just hit this one real quick. I can't remember who asked, but they were on your Facebook. Basically, exercise tips for someone over 50. And I don't know their current state or their athletic ability right now. But let's just say in general, in a person over 50.
There's many different ways that look. You know, over 50. Stan Efferding's over 50, right?
That's what. So I mean, shit. I guess that is kind of hard to answer.
But I would just assume that let's just assume that this guy kind of had a normal job. Sold insurance and he got the dad bod going, right?
Yeah.
And he's a little fatter than he'd like, right? So I think the easiest thing to start out with is something called walking, and not just going for like a stroll, but actually trying to get a good pace when you walk. You saw what it's like to try to keep up with Stan while we were trying to film him. Yeah, he almost just took off on us a couple times.
Yeah,
so try to walk with a purpose. Do as many 10-minute walks in a day as you can handle. If you feel like occasionally going on a longer walk, maybe you got like a Sunday free or something and you can go and walk with your wife or your kids. Maybe you want to go for more like a half-hour walk or something like that. But try to get in a handful of 10-minute walks throughout the week. That's the easiest place to start. And an easy progression from those 10-minute walks, which you might look like a psychopath, but that's okay. Put on a weight vest and go for a walk. So basically just about anybody that I know, even my mom who's recovering from back surgery, just about anybody can handle walking. And now, would we be able to put a weight vest on her to walk if it was just a pound or two? Sure.
Yeah.
So most people can handle that. It's a great place to start. And then if you've never really been into a gym before and never had you don't have training experience, that's where it's a good idea to invest in a personal trainer. If you don't think you want to have a trainer for a long time, say, hey, show me how to lift. Show me like some things I can do on my own. I can't afford it. I can afford you for this week, and that's about it. Then I'll have to move on. A lot of YouTube videos, bodybuilding.com. Don't forget about bodybuilding.com is a great resource. And that's where many people started,
Yeah. Real quick, you had said you would eat a lot of cereal in the middle of the night. What's your favorite cereal?
My favorite cereal ever. Uh, let's see. Well, let me try to think about what it was that I ate as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I really liked a lot, and I heard that this was one of the first cereals, and it was one of the first cereals to use sugar.
Mm.
I guess Kellogg's back in the day, they didn't want to use the guy that created that. He didn't want to go the sugar route.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's Super Golden Crisp.
Ooh,
Was like the first one.
that was good.
And no one really cares about that one, but for some reason, like that's what I used to just eat the hell out of as a kid.
It's so sweet.
Listen to this.
I'm listening.
Just released from the hospital yesterday, brother. Time spent with family is always the best. Love you like you're my little brother. Give my love to the rest of the family, especially your pops, C.T. Fletcher.
Damn. Way to go, CT.
What a fucking beast that guy is.
Yeah.
Goddamn heart surgery.
He never gave in 1 inch when people were telling him, dude, do a GoFundMe, go do this, go do that. He's like, no. He's I'm doing it all on my own.
Yeah, he's he's a resilient son of a bitch. And I heard, I was getting updates from his son, and his son was like, shit, he's like walking through this, he had some bad days. He had some, I'm sure it's super emotional, and I'm sure it was hard, but he was cranking through it. He was doing squats. He was doing squats with his walker. They were having him do dips with his walker, not regular dips like you used to see Arnold and Franco Columbu do, but he was doing like mini dips while he had his, while he was in the hospital. And the reason why they have you do that is so you don't fall. It's so that you can really control the walker really well,
Okay.
and they'll have you kind of restore some strength in your legs. But while CT has been banged up, my dad has been checking in with him a lot. My dad, writes him letters and checks in with him all the time. And
That's so great.
There's anybody who's listening to this podcast, you ever get anybody in the hospital, reach out to them. I don't care what it is. Somebody has an accident, they were mowing the lawn and something happened to them or whatever. Somebody twists an ankle, somebody just has like a really wicked flu and they end up in a hospital for a couple days, or they need a surgery or whatever it is. You should always reach out to people in the hospital. They're fucking terrified.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what's coming next. And if you can't get to them because they're in a different state or something, I can give them a phone call or do something. Send them some goddamn flowers or something. Stop being so selfish, Smokey. Where's some sort of something happened today? It was like some sort of release of I heard, I don't know. I was scrolling through Instagram. People seem to be really excited. There was like some sort of new shirt out or something. It's blue.
I haven't seen anything.
Something about smoke. Something about, I don't know.
Oh, let me check out markbellslingshot.com and see if we can find anything.
Yeah, pull that up. Let's see what's on here. Oh, top sellers. Wow, look at that.
The internet's real slow right now. It's coming. Come on.
I think the internet's not the only thing slow around here. Oh, maybe the internet's slow because this fucking picture is like 75 gigs. Who is that? Is that Lee Priest? Is that Jay Cutler? Oh, it's Smokey. I couldn't. The angle, all I saw was the arm and the tricep.
Yeah.
Dude, Jay Cutler.
Oh my God.
We barely got him here. It's been so tough. Wow, you're really blowing that horn. Lil Smokey approved. What is there going to be a whole release of this Pound Town? Is it going to be like a brand? He's going to branch off? Poundtown.com?
Dang.
Next stop, Pound.
We'll have a Pound Town line.
Yeah.
That's what it'll be, yeah.
Pound Town wraps, Pound Town knee sleeve, Pound Town slingshot.
Yeah. All right.
The whistle.
All right, so we have Josh Bryant coming up.
Who's that?
He's kind of strong, a little strong.
Gas station strong.
There he is.
Right?
Yeah, so that's coming up Thursday.
Gas station ready.
And then Friday we have Bio Lane himself, Lane Norton.
Bio Lane.
Yeah, so people who are checking in right now, we got a lot of cool shit coming your way.
Bio Lane. Yeah, Lane Norton, his girly friend, will be on the podcast as well, and he's got somebody he's rolling with who will be on the podcast as well. So we'll get tons of information from those guys. And don't forget, we are going to have Phil Heath on the podcast coming up. We are having Jay Cutler on the podcast. We have Matt Brown, former UFC fighter, on the podcast. We got all kinds of. We're just killing it.
Yeah.
One step at a time. All right, peeps. That's all the time we got. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.